Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. The Kremlin calls Ukraine peace talks constructive, but no territorial compromise reached after a 5-hour meeting in Moscow. US lawmakers warn Trump over Venezuela strike, threaten war powers amid escalating Caribbean military moves. Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnav flags threat of fake news to democracy. Telecom Minister Scindia highlights Sanchar Sathi app's role in blocking frauds and recovering phones. And buoyed by Kohli's return to form, hosts India eye a series win in Raipur. For the Proteas, Bavuma and Maharaj return. The Kremlin has described the Ukraine peace talks as constructive, but has said no compromise had been reached on territorial questions. The comments came after talks between the Russian President Vladimir Putin, the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner that was held over 5 hours in Moscow.
So pleased to see you.
5 hours of talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US negotiators, including Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, failed to produce a breakthrough on securing Ukraine peace deal. Kremlin spokesperson said, though the meeting was constructive, but parts of the plan remained unacceptable to Russia.
The conversation was very useful, constructive and very meaningful. It lasted not for 5 minutes but for 5 hours. Naturally, we discussed with US colleagues the content of those drafts, those documents which the Americans submitted to Moscow some time ago. We went through these documents. We did not discuss any specific formulas, any specific American proposals. We could agree with certain things and the President confirmed this to his interlocutors. We criticized some things and the President did not hide a critical, even negative attitude to a number of proposals.
Just before the meeting, Putin said changes proposed by Kyiv and Europe to a US-backed draft peace plan were unacceptable. He said Russia did not want a war with European powers but was ready to fight if Europe did want a direct conflict with Moscow.
We are not planning to fight Europe. I've said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The question is, if Europe starts a war with us, I believe that very quickly. This is not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we act in a surgical, careful way. You understand, right? It is not war in the full modern sense of the word. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
While Tuesday's talks were underway, Trump told his cabinet in Washington that the conflict had not been easy to resolve, describing it as a mess.
As you know, we have a problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine, but we're trying to get that settled. I've settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th, and our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation, let me tell you. What a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years.
Ukrainian president thanked Ireland for its support during a visit to Dublin on Tuesday, telling lawmakers that unity among Ukraine's partners had become a main weapon in conflict. Ukrainian representatives have held 2 rounds of high-level talks on the draft plan in recent weeks, which have been attended by Witkoff, Kushner, and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Bureau Report, DD India.
A meeting of NATO foreign ministers will be held in Brussels on Wednesday, dominated by talks on Ukraine's future and unease among allies over a US-backed peace plan. The meeting, one of only two formal ministerials on NATO's annual calendar, is expected to showcase unity as allies review progress since the Hague summit and also begin preparing for the 2026 summit in Ankara. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will skip the ski meeting with his deputy attending in his place. Now, much of Wednesday's closed-door debate is expected to focus on the peace plan, which European and Ukrainian officials have been rewriting over the past 2 weeks. European leaders insist that only Ukraine can decide on its territories, while President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasizes that security guarantees and preserving sovereignty remain top priorities. The European Union negotiators say they have reached a deal to phase out Russian gas imports by 2027, aiming to end the bloc's reliance on Moscow for energy. The European Council announced on Wednesday that it has reached an agreement with the European Parliament to cut Russian gas imports in stages over the next 3 years. The plan includes a binding ban on liquefied natural gas imports from the end of 2026, followed by a complete halt to pipeline gas purchases by autumn of 2027. So the move comes after a sharp decline in Russian gas deliveries since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, dropping to 12% of EU imports compared with 45% before the conflict. Hungary, France and Belgium remain among the member states still receiving Russian gas. And Ambassador Ashok Sajanar, former senior diplomat, now joins us to put into context the Russia-Ukraine peace efforts. Ambassador Sajanar, thank you for being with us. Now, how can negotiators realistically address Russia's demands for the recognition of those annexed regions and also safeguard Ukraine's territorial and sovereignty, territorial integrity and sovereignty?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark, for having me. I think this is the biggest dilemma, that afflicts the progress of the negotiations, because there are demands from Russia and there are demands from Ukraine. And as far as territorial integrity is concerned, of course, the position of Ukraine has been that even going as far back as to 2014, Crimea and also about 20% of the territory that has been annexed by Russia after the war started in February 22, that Ukraine will not give up any of its territory, and that position is also supported by the European powers.
Right.
But I think realistically, looking at what the situation is on the battlefield, on the battleground, it is, I think everyone really understands that some concessions will have to be given. But there has to be some movement, and we don't see any movement on the part of, I would say, to begin with, Russia, because it is sticking to each and every one of its demands,
right,
whether it is territory or it is security guarantees for Ukraine or it is membership of NATO, etc. So I think there has to be some indication of some flexibility before we can reach some sort of a conclusion.
But if we look at Ukraine's position, Andrei Yarmak has resigned. He's Zelensky's key man, resigned over corruption charges. Are there any significant challenges then to Kiev's credibility at the negotiating table? I mean, just the backing of the US and Europe is not enough.
No, absolutely. I think Yermak was a very hardline person, and he protected the position of Ukraine very, very strongly and very staunchly. And he was negotiating for Ukraine, but right in the middle he had to go. But I would imagine that a change of personnel would not really result in a change of positions. And in that context, the position of Ukraine and Europe together has been quite consistent that, first, all of them want a ceasefire. That is something also that Mr. Trump initially wanted, but Mr. Putin is not agreeable to. He says that if there is a ceasefire, that period will be used by Ukraine to arm itself. But right. I don't know whether that is a very plausible argument. But still, there is a huge chasm, Mark. There's a huge gap between the positions of Russia and the position of Ukraine and Europe. Unfortunately, Mark, the position that was taken by the United States right at the beginning, it was seen as if the text had been written by the US and Russia together. And so in that sense, it's not been said in so many words, but the credibility of that initial proposal was very suspect and very doubtful.
So are the, are US and European interests important in a final solution? Because there could be problems. I mean, if some external powers come and impose a settlement that, could lack local backing.
No, absolutely. I think what Ukraine claims is that its fight is not only for itself, but its fight is for the preservation of the UN principles, UN Charter of Territorial Integrity and Sovereignty. As far as Europe is concerned, they think that this is a fight for their future, fight for their destiny. Because if aggression is rewarded, aggression by Russia is rewarded in terms of handing over all these territories to Russia, then it will embolden it to launch similar attacks against possibly the Baltic republics, some of the other states which are neighboring. Russia has said that it has no such intentions. But I think in the eyes of the Europeans, the Russian credibility is severely dented, because right before the attack on Ukraine also, Russia had been claiming that it was not planning to attack Ukraine. But then we know what happened in February of 2022. So I think they want ironclad guarantees for Ukraine's security so that it doesn't have to face a similar situation after a few months or a few years.
Ambassador Sajanhar, so what kind of realistic non-NATO security guarantees exist for Ukraine?
Yeah, so I think this possibly also everyone recognizes that membership of NATO is not on the negotiating table, not now, maybe not ever, at least for not a long time. But at least if there are foreign troops from some of the neighboring countries, not under the umbrella of NATO, which are able to provide some security to Ukraine. Also, that there are no limitations on the numbers of troops that Ukraine can have in its armed forces. Like Russia had been demanding that it was 50,000, and I think some figures that it should be 50,000, should not be more than that. Some figures that have been floating out of Europe seem to suggest that they want about 600,000, maybe some figure in between. The point is that if there are direct negotiations, then there has to be a give and take. It cannot be a total give on the part of Ukraine, total take on the part of Russia. I think the solution will have to be found somewhere in between, and neither of the two sides, unfortunately, are willing to relent, willing to show any flexibility whatsoever.
Indeed. And a final question, Ambassador Sajanhar. I mean, everything is weaponized. There are oil is weaponized, rare earths are weaponized, ports are weaponized. So what trade-offs can be made in terms of economic terms, because the war is costly on all sides?
No, absolutely. War is costly on all sides, and I think it is more difficult for Ukraine because Russia, in that sense, has greater resilience and greater staying power than Ukraine. And even as far as, although EU in totality is about $21 trillion economy, but still their economies are also suffering, and this is not including the $4 trillion that you have as far as the United Kingdom is concerned. So, it's a large economy, and the Russian economy is just about 2 trillion, 2.5 trillion. So there is a big mismatch in the two of this. But still, as far as trade-offs are concerned, what the Europeans are saying that the Russian frozen assets could be used for the reconstruction of Ukraine. As far as the status of Odessa is concerned, that is something that Ukraine would definitely not like to give up. So I think on some issues, on critical minerals, on rare earths, something could be discussed. But when it is the question mark of territorial integrity and sovereignty, economic aspects play a role, but they don't really play a decisive role in coming to some sort of a settlement.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sajanar. Thank you for putting that into context for us. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Netanyahu's office says that the remains handed over by Hamas are not linked to the hostages still held in Gaza. The US pauses all immigration applications from 19 non-European countries. India expands aid under Operation Sagar Bandhu. INS Sukanya supplies airlifted to Sri Lanka's eastern province. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Dissent is growing in Washington as the United States' lawmakers, they are clashing over President Donald Trump's escalating military activity in the Caribbean and also pressure on Venezuela. So senators and representatives from both houses and both parties, they are now threatening to invoke Congress's war powers if the administration moves forward with a strike inside the country. Here's Harshita Oberoy's report.
For months, US lawmakers have voiced concerns over what they call an unchecked campaign against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. On Tuesday, Senators Tim Kaine, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, and Rand Paul warned that unauthorized military action would be a dangerous and unacceptable step. A similar resolution in the House aims to block hostilities without congressional consent. Concerns have intensified following at least 20 US strikes on suspected drug smuggling boats since September, which have killed more than 80 people, and reports that a second strike targeting survivors may violate international law. Meanwhile, US Navy vessels and military jets were seen on Tuesday near Ponce, Puerto Rico. The show of force comes as the US maintains pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, whose chances of a safe US-mediated exit appear increasingly slim. After a recent call in which Trump dismissed most of Maduro's demands, the president declared Venezuela's airspace closed in its entirety, with Puerto Rico serving as a forward base for operations tied to the crisis. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth noted that strikes have been temporarily paused because drug smuggling vessels have become harder to locate, but emphasized that operations against traffickers will resume.
And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that.
US President Donald Trump warned that any country trafficking illegal drugs into the US citing cocaine from Colombia is subject to attack, underlining his hard-line approach to narcotics.
Anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
Amid this escalating tension, Pope Leo, the first US-born pope, cautioned against military intervention, advocating dialogue and economic pressure instead. Harshita Oberoi for DD India.
In a bold escalation of its anti-immigration agenda, the Trump administration on Tuesday suspended all green card and citizenship applications from nationals of 19 high-risk nations under existing travel bans, including Afghanistan, Yemen, Haiti, Venezuela, Sweden, Sudan, Somalia, Iran, Libya, Burma, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Eritrea. So the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services memo cites national security, blames lax Biden-era vetting for last week's fatal D.C. shooting of 2 National Guard soldiers by an Afghan evacuee who pled not guilty to murder on Tuesday. Immigrant lawyers report cancelled naturalization oaths and interviews, sparking family separations and backlogs. The Department of Homeland Security eyes broader refugee reviews. Critics decry collective punishment. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has vowed permanent pauses on poorer nations' migration, that is, fueling deportation drives amid housing and crime rhetoric. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has announced on Wednesday that forensic tests have confirmed that the remains handed over by Hamas on Tuesday do not belong to either of the last 2 deceased hostages still held in Gaza. Under the October ceasefire agreement, Hamas transferred what the Red Cross described as the body of one of the remaining victims. Israel's National Center for Forensic Medicine examined the materials termed findings by the Israeli Defense Forces and determined that they were unrelated to any hostage. The 2 outstanding deceased hostages are Israeli police officer Ran Givli and the Thai citizen Sudatisak Rithanhalak, both abducted during the October 7, 2023 attack. The Red Cross has served as an intermediary for hostage releases as well as body transfers throughout the conflict. Meanwhile, Israel will send a representative to meet officials in Lebanon in a bid to establish a basis for a relationship and economic cooperation. Israel and Lebanon entered a US-brokered ceasefire agreement last year, but Israel has not halted strikes against Lebanon's militant Hezbollah group ever since. Let's get you some updates on Cyclone Dwa from Sri Lanka now. And Sri Lanka is beginning to see gradual relief as all major flood alerts have been lifted, with the Irrigation Department confirming steady drops in river levels. Only the Kelani River at Nagalagam Street, it remains on alert. The waters are receding and the disaster toll, however, continues to rise with 474 deaths and also 356 people are still missing, the DMC reported, as Kandy accounts for the highest fatalities. Sri Lanka's government, it has issued a special gazette declaring 22 districts severely affected by Cyclone Dwa as national disaster areas. India has significantly expanded its humanitarian aid under the Operation Sagar Bandhu, deploying air, sea and ground assets to support relief efforts. Supplies delivered to Trincomalee by INS Sukanya were airlifted by the Sri Lankan Air Force to isolated communities across the eastern province. Further, Indian rescue teams carried out large-scale evacuations with NDRF personnel in Puttalam, assisting nearly 800 stranded residents, including expectant mothers as well as injured people. Meanwhile, the Indian Air Force helicopters on Tuesday, they airdropped over 5.5 tons of relief evacuated dozens from inaccessible terrain, and transported critically injured survivors to medical centers. A C-17 Globemaster also arrived with a rapidly deployable modular field hospital, complete with ambulance, trauma care units and operation theatres, to Sri Lanka on Tuesday, along with 73 medical personnel. While the island is undertaking measures to get back to normalcy, the Public Health Inspectors Union of Sri Lanka has warned that there is a potential risk of an outbreak of infectious diseases in the coming days, associated with floods and inundation in various parts of the island. Meanwhile, in view of the heavy rainfall warning caused by Cyclone Dwa, all schools in the Indian Union Territory of Puducherry will remain closed on Wednesday. And in view of the heavy rain forecast, the India Meteorological Department called for a complete suspension of fishing operations over the southwest and adjoining West Central Bay of Bengal and off Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, South Coastal Andhra Pradesh, North Sri Lanka, the Gulf of Mannar and the common area until morning. Earlier, the IMD had issued a red alert for Tiruvallur, Chennai, Kanchipuram and Chengalpattu districts in Tamil Nadu on Tuesday, as heavy rains triggered by Cyclone Dwa hit the state. But frustration is mounting in Indonesia's flood-ravaged regions, with survivors criticizing sluggish rescue operations and delayed aid after last week's rare near-equator tropical storm triggered deadly floods as well as landslides across Southeast Asia. The UN's World Meteorological Organization, it has warned that such extreme rainfall events will intensify with climate change as warmer air holds more moisture. So rare equatorial cyclones, they leave communities unprepared, amplifying devastation, as we saw in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Sri Lanka and Vietnam, where one station logged the country's second heaviest 24-hour rainfall ever.
Rising temperatures increase the potential risk of more extreme rainfall events because a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. That's the law of physics. So we are seeing more extreme rainfall and we will continue to do so in the future.
Aircraft maker Airbus had lowered its 2025 target for deliveries because of fuselage panel quality issues at its flagship model, the A320. Airbus said it now expects full-year 2025 commercial aircraft deliveries to total 790, down from its initial target of 820, a drop of 3.7%. Airbus had warned on Tuesday that up to 628 of its popular A320 planes worldwide may need to be inspected for the metal plate quality issue. It added that the number of planes earmarked for checks was reducing day by day as inspections progress to identify those needing a specific action to be taken. The announcement raised concerns that hundreds of planes would need to be grounded for long periods. Still to come here on DD India Newshour. President Murmu to attend Navy Day and to witness the Indian Navy's operational display showcasing indigenous maritime power. Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav reviews Delhi NCR pollution control, orders action, reports and faster emission monitoring. President Putin to begin a two-day visit to India on Thursday. Trade tops the agenda at the 23rd annual summit.
So our episode is on accountability more than just an apology text.
Yep.
We didn't get one, did we?
If no British politician has the courage to issue an apology, get somebody from the royal family to do it, because after all, everything was done in the name of the crown. No one likes to be told that in their family tree there are a lot of skeletons. They have never allowed themselves to confront the horrors of their past, so I'm sorry to say we never got the apology. There is not just amnesia on the part of the British, the colonizers, but there is some forgetfulness or ignorance on the part of the rest of us too.
You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main news. The Kremlin calls Ukraine peace talks constructive, but no territorial compromise reached after a 5-hour meeting in Moscow. US lawmakers warn Trump over Venezuela strike, threaten war powers amid escalating Caribbean military moves. Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnav flags the threat of fake news to democracy. Telecom Minister Sindhya highlights Sanchar Sathi app's role in blocking frauds and recovering phones. And buoyed by Kohli's return to form, hosts India eye a series win in Raipur for the Proteas. Bavuma and Maharaj return. India's President Draupadi Murmu presented the National Awards for Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities for the year 2025 at a ceremony in New Delhi to mark International Day of Persons with Disabilities. She conferred awards on 33 exemplary individuals and institutions for their outstanding contributions to inclusive education, technology, employment, and overall empowerment. The awards recognize the courage and determination of persons with disabilities and the efforts of those working toward creating a barrier-free and inclusive society in India. Speaking on the occasion, the President congratulated all the awardees. She said that these awards have far-reaching social significance. By emulating them, other individuals and institutions can move towards empowering persons with disabilities. The President said that the entire humanity must make Divyangjan, feel comfortable and equal. Also providing a barrier-free environment to them in every way should be the priority of society.
दिव्यांगजन की गरिमा, आत्मनिर्भरता और आत्मगौरव को सुनिश्चित करना हम सभी देशवासियों की जिम्मेदारी है। सभी देशवासियों का ये संकल्प लेना चाहिए कि हमारी सामाजिक और राष्ट्रीय प्रगति के प्रयासों में दिव्यांगजन को भागीदारी बनाएंगे और ये सुनिश्चित करेंगे कि कोई भी दिव्यांगजन पीछे ना छूटे।
Shanmugam Beach in southern India's Thiruvananthapuram is all set to witness the grand celebrations of India's Navy Day. On Wednesday, President Draupadi Murmu will grace the Navy Day celebrations. She will witness the operational demonstration by the Indian Navy. Demonstrating Indian Navy's operational might, the celebration will feature a striking display of maritime power by warships, naval aircraft and submarine, high-speed maneuvers by Hawks, fighter jets, combat freefall and also slithering demonstration showcasing synergy of land-sea operations and also firing by warships would be key highlights of this event. The operational demonstration aims to bring forth the indomitable spirit and core strengths of the Indian Navy as combat-ready, cohesive, Atmanirbhar, safeguarding seas for a Viksit Samriddha Bharat. The demonstration will highlight the maritime excellence of state-of-the-art indigenous platforms proudly symbolizing Atmanirbhar Bharat. 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was at a summit on natural farming in Coimbatore, which left a lasting impression on his mind. And he expressed his thoughts on LinkedIn post with a clarion call, in fact, to people across India to increase natural farming. Natural farming, as we all know, draws from India's traditional knowledge systems and modern ecological principles to cultivate crops without synthetic chemicals. The approach relies on recycling farm residues and enhancing soil health through mulching and aeration rather than external inputs. At a larger level, India has made commendable progress in the field. Last year, the Government of India launched the National Mission on Natural Farming, which has already connected lakhs of farmers with sustainable practices. Natural farming is also closely linked to our efforts to promote Shri Anna or millets. What is also gladdening is the fact that women farmers are taking to natural farming in a big way. Over the past few decades, the rising dependence on chemical fertilizers and pesticides has affected soil fertility, moisture and long-term sustainability. At the same time, farming costs have steadily increased. Natural farming directly addresses these challenges. Seeing the convergence between farmers, science, entrepreneurship and collective action in Coimbatore was truly inspiring. And I am sure we will together continue making our agriculture and allied sectors productive and sustainable. If you know of teams working on natural farming, do let me know too. That's what the Prime Minister wrote. And External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar today highlighted how the contribution of Indians abroad is reshaping the country's economic engagement with the world. He was speaking at India's World Annual Conclave 2025, and Dr. Jaishankar said that in a globalized world, conversations around external engagement often focus heavily on trade, while overlooking the massive impact of human mobility and overseas employment. He pointed out that India received a record $135 billion in remittances last year, nearly double the value of exports to the United States. His remarks highlight the growing ambition of India's global workforce as a critical pillar of its external economic engagement.
Last year, remittances to India were $135 billion. That's about roughly twice our exports to the United States. Now, it's just the remittances, because think of the people abroad, their own livelihood, the assets they have created there, the services which have been generated in India, the second, third order consequences of all this. And I leave it to you to actually imagine what is the size of this business which is called mobility.
Preparations are on for the Russian President Vladimir Putin's two-day visit to India, which begins Thursday. The Kremlin spokesperson says that trade would figure high on the agenda of the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. Akhilesh Suman reports from New Delhi.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Tuesday said that during his upcoming visit to India, Russian President Vladimir Putin will discuss both bilateral and international issues with Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
India for us is a great partner, and we do hope that the visit of President Putin will be successful. As successful was the visit of Prime Minister Modi 1 year ago to Moscow. President and Prime Minister had a very, very good possibility to spend lots of hours together discussing the most sensitive issues of the global and regional agenda. We hope that this will be the case for New Delhi meeting the day after tomorrow.
Addressing a virtual press conference organized by Sputnik News, Peskov said there's vast potential for cooperation between India and Russia, ranging from small nuclear reactors and military equipment to various goods and services. Peskov reiterated that sanctions imposed on Russia by the US and the EU are illegal, as they have not been authorized by the United Nations. Peskov also said that Putin will also share a first-hand assessment of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict and the efforts to resolve it.
We do appreciate the position and the stand of India vis-à-vis Ukrainian settlement and Ukrainian affair. We do appreciate the readiness of New Delhi to contribute to a search of peaceful solution in this very complicated conflict. And we do respect the position of Prime Minister Modi, and we do respect the possibility of exchanging information from the firsthand between himself and our president. And we hope that this practice will continue.
Business leaders from both the countries will meet in Delhi to explore deeper business-to-business partnerships which could help narrow the trade imbalance which currently favors Russia. Akhilesh Suman's report, DD India.
Well, India and Russia share a 78-year legacy of stable, time-tested partnership. The bond between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin reflects the depth of this strategic partnership, strengthened further through the annual summits and also the 2+2 dialogue. Their regular high-level engagement continues to drive cooperation across political, defense, economic and technological domains. Now, in this next report, Mohammad Abzarul Hassan, he explores new dimensions of India-Russia relations.
Russia has been a long-standing and time-tested partner for India. Under the strategic partnership, several institutionalized dialogue mechanisms operate at both political and official levels to ensure regular interaction and follow-up on cooperation activities. The bilateral relationship has remained strong and stable over the past 78 years. In December 2021, a new dimension to the bilateral cooperation was added with the first 2+2 dialogue. Meetings of foreign and defense ministers of both countries started taking place alongside the summit-level talks between Prime Minister Modi and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. So far, 22 annual summits have taken place alternatively in India and Russia. The last summit was held on July 8 and 9, 2024 in Moscow, and President Putin is set to visit India for the 23rd summit in New Delhi. Bilateral trade between India and Russia reached a record high of $68.7 billion in FY 2024-25. India's exports to Russia, $4.9 billion. India's imports from Russia, $63.8 billion. Major items of export from India include pharmaceuticals, organic and inorganic chemicals, iron and steel, and marine products. Major items of import from Russia include oil and petroleum products, vegetable oil, particularly sunflower oil, fertilizers, coking coal, precious stones, and metals. The primary mechanism at the government level for enhancing trade and economic cooperation is the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission for Trade, Economic, Scientific, and Cultural Cooperation. Intensifying the trade and economic relations has been identified as a priority area by both the leaders, who had set the targets of increasing bilateral investment to $50 billion by 2025 and bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. India has long-standing and wide-ranging cooperation with Russia in the field of defense. India-Russia military technical cooperation has evolved from a buyer-seller framework to one involving joint research, development and production of advanced defense technologies and systems. RM and Russian Defense Minister co-chaired the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Military Technical Cooperation. INS Turshil was commissioned into Indian Navy in the presence of RM at the Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad on 9th of December 2024. On 28 March to 2nd of April 2025, the bilateral naval exercise Indra 2025 between Indian and Russian navies was conducted in two phases: harbour phase at Chennai and sea phase in Bay of Bengal. Science and technology has played a key role in the bilateral India-Russia partnership, especially in the early days after India's independence. India and Russia work together on basic sciences, materials science, mathematics, and cutting-edge areas like India's manned spaceflight program Gaganyaan, nanotechnologies, etc. India's only nuclear power plant established with another country is in Kundankulam in Tamil Nadu, which is established in collaboration with Russia. The bilateral cooperation is guided by the new roadmap for science, technology and innovation signed during the 21st Annual Summit in New Delhi in December 2021. In 2024, Prime Minister Modi was conferred upon Russia's highest state decoration, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, the first called for Prime Minister's outstanding contribution to India-Russia ties. Apart from arms and trade, cultural ties from Russia's love for Indian movies to scholarship programs and tourism have helped the two nations to maintain strong relations despite ups and downs. Around 63,000 people of Indian origin live in Russia. Mohammad Abzarul Hassan reports for DT India.
And updates from India's Parliament now. Replying to questions during question hour in the lower house, Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has said that fake news is a threat to democracy. He stressed on the need to take strict action on social media, fake news as well as AI-generated deep fakes. He also highlighted that the government has enacted a very strict law to regulate online gaming, money which is gambling, and also due to which crores of families across the country are benefiting from the laws.
Fake news is a threat to our democracy today. और हमें सोशल मीडिया पर, फेक न्यूज़ पर, AI जनरेटेड डीप फेक पर स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन लेने की ज़रूरत है. जिस तरह से सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म्स का उपयोग करके एक तरीके से कई ऐसे इकोसिस्टम बन गए हैं जो कि भारत के संविधान को फॉलो नहीं करना चाहते, बहुत तरह से इस पार्लियामेंट द्वारा बनाए हुए कानून को भी पालन नहीं करना चाहते. उसमें स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन लेने की और कड़े नियम बनाने की वाकई बहुत सख्त जरूरत है.
Amid concerns around privacy and also user data, which was triggered by the government mandate of pre-installing the Sanchar Sathi app on phones, the Communications Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia, during question hour in the lower house of Parliament, he ruled out any chances of snooping through the state-backed security or cyber security app.
संचार साथी एक ऐसा ऐप है जिसके आधार पर जन भागीदारी के आधार पर आज देश की एक एक जनता और नागरिक अपने आप को सुरक्षित रख सकता है फ्रॉड से, स्टोलन मोबाइल से, अपने स्टोलन मोबाइल को रिकॉर्ड कर सकता है, रिपोर्ट कर सकता है. ये मैं अवश्य कहना चाहता हूं कि इस ऐप के आधार पर न स्नूपिंग संभव है, न स्नूपिंग होगा. प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की सरकार देश की जनता के हाथों में अधिकार देना चाहती है ताकि वे अपने आप को सुरक्षित रख पाए.
In a high-level review meeting on Delhi NCR's air pollution on Wednesday, the Union Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav, he directed all state and union territory authorities to submit concrete action taken reports on their pollution management efforts. This was the 6th such meeting to assess ongoing measures for preventing and controlling air pollution across the region. The minister also outlined a year-long action plan for 2026 aimed at ensuring sustained monitoring and intervention throughout the year and not just during peak pollution months.
अभी का ये जो विषय है, इस विषय को लेने के लिए हम लोगों ने ये तय किया है कि एक मीटिंग हम चंडीगढ़ में आयोजित करेंगे जहां पर हरियाणा और पंजाब की सरकारों को बुला करके हम पराली के विषय के प्रबंधन की भी एक वर्षीय योजना काम करेंगे. हमारा ये मानना है कि पिछले ली गई 6 मीटिंगों के परिणाम आपको CAQM चेयरमैन और बाकी लोगों ने बताया है और अब आने वाले एक वर्ष की योजना पर हम नीचे जाकर के काम करेंगे.
The Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII, on Wednesday unveiled India Edge 2025, a pivotal forum on labour reforms for Viksit Bharat, with the Union Minister Mansukh Mandavia as the keynote speaker. And amid the recent implementation of the 4 labour codes on the 21st of November, replacing 29 outdated laws, the Minister Mandavia, he hailed the pro-worker, pro-growth measures for universal social security, also gig worker protections and women's empowerment, accelerating India's 2047 developed nation vision.
हमें लेबर को राइट भी देना है, हमें उसका कल्याण भी करना है और इसलिए हमने कई ऐसे कदम उठाए दोस्तों. सिर्फ कानूनों का मर्जर ही नहीं बल्कि श्रम शक्ति के सम्मान का मिशन के रूप में हमने रिफॉर्म को लेके आए.
Let's take a short break. You're watching DD India Newshour. Stay with us. watching DD India Newshour. I'm Mark Lynn. The US President Donald Trump introduced White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett as a potential Federal Reserve chair at a White House meeting. Earlier, Trump said that he would be announcing his selection for the next chair of the Federal Reserve early next year. In remarks at a cabinet meeting, Trump also said that the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent does not want the job. Now, financial markets have recently focused on National Economic Advisor and the White House aide Kevin Hassett as frontrunners.
I want to thank you all for being here. It's a great group. And I guess a potential Fed chair is here, too. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that? Potential. He's a respected person, that I can tell you. Thank you, Kevin.
So let's take a look at the background of Kevin Hassett, who is likely to take over as the Fed chair from Jerome Powell. Now, Hassett has a long-standing relationship with Trump and his alignment with the president's economic thinking. This makes him, uniquely positioned for the role. So Hassett's background, it spans decades of involvement in Republican economic policy making. Before joining Trump's administration during his first term, he had served as the economic advisor to George W. Bush, John McCain, as well as Mitt Romney. So Hassett is currently serving as the director of the National Economic Council. He was the senior advisor and chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors from 2017 to 2019 as well. However, he has also faced criticism for a widely debated model released in 2020, projecting that COVID-19 deaths would drop to zero by mid-May of that year. Earlier in his career, he had co-authored the book Dow 36,000 in 1999, which predicted a dramatic rise in stock market valuations. Hassett has openly expressed willingness to become the Fed chair. Asian equities mostly advanced on Wednesday, tracking Wall Street's rally resumption, though gains tempered as trades and traders eyed pivotal U.S. implications and indicators ahead of the Federal Reserve's December 10 meeting. So with a third rate cut, fully anticipated focus sharpened on the automatic data processing private payrolls report due later on Wednesday, and also Friday's personal consumption expenditure inflation gauge, the Fed's favored metric. Money markets pegged December cut odds at 90%, plus 3 more by year-end 2026. Now, Tokyo's Nikkei, it climbed 1.1%. Seoul added about 1%. Oil edged up with the West Texas Intermediate. It was over 0.3% at about $58.82 per barrel. And Brent was also up about 0.3%, 62.61 US dollars a barrel. Let's get to the sports news now. India are eyeing a series win as they are facing South Africa in the second ODI in Raipur today. And the Proteas skipper Themba Bavuma has returned and he won the toss. He chose to bowl first. So Bavuma's return is one of the 3 changes for South Africa, with Lungi Ngidi and Keshav Maharaj also included. Now they come in for Ryan Rickleston, Pranelan Subrayan and Otniel Bartman. And India, meanwhile, have stuck to the same winning combination that brought about that 17-run victory in Ranchi, close match that was. Out in the middle, Ruturaj Gaikwad and Virat Kohli are steady for the moment at the crease, and the score, they've hit a 100-run mark. Rohit Sharma and Jaiswal fell early. India are leading the 3-match series, as we said, 1-0. The Indian women's hockey team will aim to continue their winning streak as they face Germany in the FIH Junior Women's World Cup in Santiago City of Chile today. India began their campaign with a comprehensive 13-0 win against Namibia, while Germany thrashed Ireland 7-1. And for the first time in the tournament's history, 24 teams contest for the title. The teams have been split into 6 pools of 4 sides each, and India have been placed in Pool C with the inaugural champions, Germany, Ireland and Namibia. Now, after round-robin matches, the 6 group winners, and the 2 best runners-up as well, they will progress to what's called the quarterfinals. The 4th edition of the Kashi Tamil Sangamam, that's Kashi Tamil Sangamam 4. That's why it's the 4th edition. It's celebrating the ancient civilizational links between Tamil Nadu and Varanasi. It has begun, and a renewed spirit of harmony and connection is there. So the sacred dip at the Hanuman Ghat marked a moment of faith and unity as the delegates connected with their spiritual heart, or Kashi, reflecting the essence of Kashi Tamil Sangamam 4. Now, this 16-day event is themed Let Us Learn Tamil. It's going to run till December 17. It aims to strengthen bonds between 2 of India's most enduring cultural landscapes. Following the inauguration of the event, a group of students cruised to the Ganga Ghats and witnessed the Ganga Aarti. They also visited several locations in the morning before arriving at Banaras Hindu University. Excited students also told DD India how the Tamil Karakalama will actually connect North India and South India.
So blessed, and this was a program which is conducted by our Tamil government and our central government, and this is a very meritorious motto of these things. And our Tamil language is a oldest language, like we used to say, like Kantlondi Mantroda Kalathileye Tontriya Mudal Moli, which means our Tamil is originated before the rocks and comets have originated. This is our language. It was so ancient language, and spreading our language in south places was also like, it was so happy to me to be a Tamil one.
What is your experience in Kashi?
Yeah, it's been really amazing because the government has made beautiful arrangements over there. I'm coming all over from Tamil Nadu, Chennai. I'm a Siddha doctor. I have learned a lot of things in Kashi. The city is very beautiful. The gesture they providing us was really great. They are treating us with beautiful respect. We have visited Kashi Vishwanath temple, and after that we went to Annapurni temple, and today we went to Ganga Aarti. Everything was really beautiful. The gesture provided by them is really amazing.
Connecting the north and the south. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. Available on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.